I'm going to do my voice scan here on the podcast, and let's see what it says about me. Click the button below and count from 1 until the recording process is complete. Going to breathe through my stomach. Going to send power. Okay, just kidding. Here we go. 7, 8, 9. Okay, enter my name here. Benjamin Dover. Part of my longevity strategy is to always have a 7th grade sense of humor because it keeps me younger. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it.
You're listening to The Human Upgrade with Dave Asprey.
You're listening to The Human Upgrade with Dave Asprey. Today's guest and I have a lot in common. We're both really interested in the field of bioenergetics. And both of us have had really severe health challenges when we were younger. Both of us decided we were going to do something about it and have explored all the different things you could possibly do here. And Harry's ended up in a place that's been a part of my journey, and he's focused on it to the extent that I'm using some of his technologies at Upgrade Labs, which is really cool. He's an author, a filmmaker, develops products, an entrepreneur who went through chronic fatigue syndrome, something that I had as a result of toxic mold exposure. And he was bedridden. I never got quite that bad. I just bought disability insurance and felt bedridden, but was able to maintain things. So he started digging in on bioenergetics. As you know, mitochondria are at the foundation of actually your eco. It's kind of the operating system for your body. And bioenergetics is a way of looking at them and looking at how to get all the different signals into that part of your body, including a lot of the signals that you cannot process with your conscious brain. This is direct communication with the cells or even the field created by the cells in your body. So Harry Massey is a founder of a company called Energy for Life and one called NES Health. And I've known him for about 9 years. And it's the first time he's been on the show. So Harry, welcome.
Thank you, Dave. It's a great pleasure to be here.
I would have liked to shoot this in person because we see each other probably every month or two, whether you're in Austin or in Park City or wherever else. But it worked out to do this online. So we're going to do it because I think the information you have for people is really, really important.
You know, I'm actually in Austin next week, but maybe I shouldn't have told you that.
All right, that's it. We're canceling this episode. We're going to do it live. Just kidding. Well, I'll be here next week too, so we'll hang out at least. But talk to me about bioenergetics. How do you define it? What is it?
So bioenergetics is the study, detection, and correction of energy in living systems. And, it's got quite a rich history. It has been known in the sort of chemistry field as just looking at how the Krebs cycle works. But it's actually much more of that. If you apply physics principles to it, and you're actually looking at how electron transfer works, it has a deeper meaning that isn't generally recognized so much in the normal sort of biochemical chemistry, big pharma world. And really bioenergetics, from our perspective, when you apply it to healing, there's two main principles. One is about recharging your energy. And for example, basically your body is a little bit like a battery. When you're looking at cells have structured water in, i.e. H3O2. And when you have structured water, it has some very, very curious properties. Like, for example, when light enters and hits H3O2, those photons will actually spin off an electron. Those electrons can actually be used for energy by your mitochondria in the Krebs cycle. So, one principle is how can you charge up your energy in the body, and light is one way, electrons, grounding, ozone, all of these different methods are ways of doing it, including the light bed in your franchises. But the second principle of bioenergetics is that you can also optimize your body's energetic control system. And, you might ask, well, what on earth do we mean by that? And most people are very used to there being a chemical control system, i.e. all of your cells have receptors for chemical messengers or molecules. However, cells also have receptors for fields. They have receptors for photons. They have receptors for magnetic information, even sound as well. And so what we're more primarily concerned with is how can we optimize that energetic control system, because that energetic control system is, I say infinitely, but the reason I say infinitely is it's pretty much instantaneous. And when you have an instantaneous control system versus a chemical control system, it basically means it's much, much more efficient for the body to get information and to correct its overall operating system through a field-based system than just chemistry. And again, some people might be skeptical of that, but you can sort of think about it like this. If you're just eating molecules or injecting or having supplements, those molecules have to be digested. They have to go through. They have to be processed by the liver. They have to go through the blood, and the molecule will travel to the cell eventually, but that takes time. Yet there's 3 trillion operations that happen in each cell in every single second. There's, depending who you are, but there's 50 to 70 trillion cells in the body that are happening at 3 trillion times a second.
Were you just making fun of obese people there?
Well, no, just children, different sizes, etc. A little bit, not really.
I don't know, Harry. I'm a little concerned here, but I'm going to let you pass on that one.
You'll let me pass. We're all a little different. We're all a little different.
It's actually a valid point. Some people do have more mitochondria than others. Do you know, off the top of your head, do women have more than men?
I have no idea about that.
I think they do, because they have, in the ovaries, there's 100,000 mitochondria per cell, and there's a lot of cells in the ovaries, and that's 20 times more than others. I would bet on a per pound basis, the average woman has more mitochondria than the average man, but I don't know for sure.
There's certainly less lazy women often than men. Basically, when you're looking at a chemical-based control system, it's actually more inefficient than an energetic or a field-based control system. And so, what's been fascinating from a bioenergetics point of view is if you look at the body and biology and health from a physics point of view, it enables an awful lot of things, but it basically means you can have a healing system that's more efficient, it's more effective, it absolutely costs less because you don't need to produce all these molecules. And it's one of the sort of areas of science that we've done about 22 years of research in this field, and there's and actually the scientists that we started the company with have been working on it another 35 years before that. But the mapping of the fields of the body and all of their particular effects, that really, it's really as important as mapping out the human genome, or of course, or mapping out chemistry, which has already basically happened. Yet it's it's not totally uncharted area, but it's really where the next era of medicine and biology is going, because it does mean that you can have a system in science and in healing and in medical practices that is a lot more efficient and cheaper, but it also doesn't have any toxicity and side effects. Well, unless you're using harmful fields, and that is actually possible. But in general, because there's no chemistry involved, you're not left with all the sort of toxic soup of all the chemicals interacting.
If your everyday routine looks like mine used to, it includes some bloating and gas, trouble losing weight, digestive issues, and probably microbial imbalances. When I learned that my gut microbiome was directly linked to all that stuff going on, I knew I had to do something, but it was hard to know what to do. And that's how I found out about Viome and the Viome Full Body Intelligence Test. Viome stands out because it uses gene expression analysis, which is RNA, instead of DNA to figure out what my body needs. They even use information they learn about you to create 100% custom formulated supplements and personalized probiotics just for you. Viome gave me the information I needed to really upgrade my health. I've known the team at Viome for almost 10 years and worked with them on their recommendations. It's real science. Now, you can give it a try too. Go to viome.com/Dave and save $110 on the Full Body Intelligence Test. I don't know if I've ever shared this story with you, but we might have chatted about it sometime. about 25 years ago, because I was running this longevity and anti-aging nonprofit group in Palo Alto. I got an interesting email from a guy. I said, "Hey, Dave, I'm the guy who invented Wi-Fi." He had the first patent on 802.11b, which is the standard for Wi-Fi. And he was probably about 60 at the time. And we had coffee at Red Rock Coffee in Mountain View, California, kind of a famous place for entrepreneurs to hang out. And he said, "Dave, the reason I'm meeting with you is I took the millions of dollars worth of gear in my lab that lets me detect minute fluctuations in electromagnetic fields. This is what we use to troubleshoot Wi-Fi. And I turned it around and I looked at my body." And he flips his laptop around and goes, "And look what's here." He goes, "There's all this electrical data coming off the body. And there's a signal in here." Right. And it kind of looked like a picture of the chakras, to be perfectly honest. I don't know if he even knew what a chakra was, but he was this hardcore engineer, didn't know anything about biology. He was like, "I noticed my body was doing this when I just turned my equipment around to look at things." And I was like, I know that this is real. And that was one of the first times I saw like a hardcore tech guy look at the body, because clearly we have a chemical system, right? And it works. But at the same time, we simultaneously have a light-based system and a magnetic-based system and a quantum-based system. And they're all communicating all the time. And as an architect of complex systems in my tech career, you probably wouldn't know this, but right now, what's happening is we're setting up our communication is there's all these different communication layers that are all talking to each other all the time to make sure that we can look at each other and we can hear each other. And it's invisible to us. But if I was to mess with routing tables, which are super buried in there, everything would stop working, right? So why wouldn't our bodies follow the same principle that there can be more than one control system for different purposes in the body? It actually makes sense. In fact, if you know complex systems, it's the only way biology can work, because some things have to be fast.
Absolutely. I mean, it's sort of fascinating because in medicine, it's like right there that they're using MRIs, magnetic resonance imaging. They use EKGs, they're using EEGs. So they're reading all these fields of the body, yet there's like this sort of blank stare that the fact that these fields could be actually doing something in the body or having a function. Yeah, they're reading them. It's sort of odd.
Yeah, the body just makes them to waste electricity because nature loves it when we waste electricity in biological systems. No, it doesn't.
Well, I mean, you bring up a great point, and that's it's ultimately, when you're looking at control systems, it's basically about how can you make the body's control system as efficient as possible? Because if you can make the control system efficient, a bit like an operating system, then you're saving energy. If you're saving energy, you have more energy available to actually heal the body. And that's, when I said those two principles, there's recharging your energy. Well, that's you're using energy from external sources like light, like ozone or air, oxygen, etc. However, if you can actually make the body more efficient at using the energy, then there's just simply more energy available anyway. And if you do the two at once, which actually is when you talked about the technology in your franchises, what we're doing in that light bed, recharging the body with energy, but we're also doing a scan. So we're looking at where there are blockages in the body's control system. And then we're basically making those energy pathways more efficient in the body. And when you do that, pretty much, I mean, I don't want to make a claim, but basically you're going to help the body to regenerate itself.
Well, I'm willing to make a claim that if you can improve the way your mitochondria work, and by the way, infrared light and red light do that in lots and lots of studies, even without all the, we'll call them the codes or the blinking stuff that you've created that we've added to it. Just the light, by the way, sunshine does similar things, but other things as well. Then better functioning mitochondria, because you've structured the water with infrared light, because you've added electrons with the red light, well, they're going to work better. And if cells work better, are you less likely to have diabetes because your cells are better at using air and food to make electricity, heat, and sex hormones and other chemicals? Well, yeah. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that. It's actually obvious. If your body has more energy, it'll do more of the stuff it wants to do.
It has more energy and it's more efficient. It's going to get better. I mean, when people talk about the placebo effect or the body's own healing mechanism, it literally is that. It is that simple. More energy, more efficiency, you get your health back.
As someone who's also dealt with chronic fatigue syndrome, this is when your mitochondria really, really function poorly. So you just cannot make energy and you feel like garbage all the time. And we both had to crawl out of that hole, for lack of a better word. Mitochondria became kind of my obsession, even since the late 90s. And when I had yak butter tea on the side of Mount Kailash in remote Western Tibet, my God, I feel so good. What just happened? And that was what led me to create Bulletproof Coffee. And I'm not involved with Bulletproof anymore. I'm now doing Danger Coffee, which has minerals on top of it. But what I discovered along the way was, why does blending oil into coffee change things? And it was a $50,000 grant to the University of Washington with Dr. Jerry Pollack, where he discovered that MCT oil and butter oil, or ghee, or just butter, when you blend them or even just expose them to warm liquids, especially with polyphenols present, that would be tea or coffee, that it changes the structure of the water to become structured water. And that one of the reasons that you feel different if you put some MCT and some butter in your Danger Coffee is that it structures the water so that your cells can use the water without having to do the work of structuring the water itself. Or you can use light to do it, which is the direction that you've headed with bioenergetics. And this is all invisible to our conscious stuff, but when you drink it, why does my body want more of that? And one of the reasons is, well, when you have the right structure of water in all of your cells, they work better. But what do you do that's different with the technology that you've built that goes beyond structuring water with red and infrared light? Because, I mean, Upgrade Labs, we're doing that, but we're doing your other stuff. What's going on there?
So, when we're looking at that second principle of bioenergetics about how fields also control your biology, the key part of that is the actual information that is carried by the field. So, you can, if we just take an analogy for a minute, if we're looking at the body as a computer, all of your cells and tissues are hardware. The energy is the energy, but the actual operating system, that's basically governed through information. And so the part that we're doing differently is when we do a scan, we're looking at how the information is distorted. So i.e. if there's any errors in the operating system. And then when we know that, we can basically send that information back to your body, and your cell receptors that will have field cell receptors pick up that information, and they know what to do with that. And they basically become, you can regenerate different tissues, or the cells become more efficient, or you just correct different functions in the body. But ultimately, it's like upgrading your body's software, and you can deliver it. There's a lot of ways you can deliver it. I mean, you were talking about structured water. I mean, in our main NES company, we manufacture these things called infoceuticals, where we're basically taking information, we've imprinted it into structured water, and people literally just drink it. So that's been pretty fascinating. So, I mean, we've been doing that 22 years. So we knew, obviously, and we've done 14 other studies off in Europe before I moved to the States. Then when we came here, I met Professor Hemel at UCSD, and he'd been doing a lot of research with Joe Dispenza. And I was at a Joe Dispenza event, and I bumped into him and said, all of these COVID studies that you're doing where you're reducing the viral penetration into lung tissue, like, we can do that without meditation, just through an infoceutical in water. And he didn't believe me.
No, he didn't. Yeah, I'm friends with them too. We talked about you.
Yeah, but he said, send me the infoceuticals to the lab. I'll check them out. It took him 3 months to check them out, and he finally checked them out. And he actually got I hate to say this, well, I'll say it anyway. He actually got a slightly better result than with the meditation study. And then he's like, anyway, he couldn't believe it. But basically, we were able to reduce the COVID virus penetrating to lung tissue by 42% over the blank, the controls.
And this is through water that has information.
It's just information. Yeah, it's information imprinted into water.
Even though you can't see it, quantum energy pulses through everything. It's all around you and it's in you. And there's science that backs up the fact that your body is a quantum system. But toxins and stress can throw your energy off balance. And that's where a company called Quantum Upgrade steps in. Quantum Upgrade offers groundbreaking products to help you get your balance back. Quantum Upgrade tests each product on humans, and the results show that the technology can boost blood flow and even reverse blood clots in minutes. The latest and greatest study shows that Quantum Upgrade increases ATP production by up to 29%. And the newest ability is that you can now use Quantum Upgrade to increase your level of consciousness based on the Hawkins map of consciousness. If you don't know what that means, do some research or listen to the show because it's impressive and fun to learn about, and it means something. Visit quantumupgrade.io/Dave and get a 7-day free trial. Enjoy. When I started what eventually became biohacking, just started healing, I would have been absolutely just outraged over that.
Well, I think you were outraged when I met you 9 years ago, right?
I'd come to the point where, okay, the idea that you can shake water with the chemical in it, okay, fine. There's no way it should be able to work because my belief was chemicals cause the effect. Therefore, if there's no chemical, there could be no effect. It was an untested assumption. It was just a belief. But it was kind of outrageous. And I always hated the idea of homeopathy, which is the earliest version of putting something in water. And it just didn't make sense because one of my fundamental beliefs about the way the world works was not an accurate belief. So as a computer science guy, I was like, anyone who uses this stuff is stupid. And then one of the guys, in fact, the first guy who told me I had a problem with mold, who's the person who created the first glutathione product, Dr. Tim Guilford. This guy's a Johns Hopkins ENT surgeon. And he quit doing surgery. He said, because I can heal people without surgery. It's not that hard. And he used homeopathy. I'm like, this guy's not stupid. In fact, he's actually able to heal me in a way others can't. And I met all these people in the longevity field who had come across various aspects of bioenergetics, and they were using it actively in clinical practice and getting great results. And I thought, well, either they're all idiots or I don't know something. And fortunately, it was that I didn't know something. And so today I accept that you can structure water in different ways, and it carries energy or carries information anyway. And can you prove it? Well, yeah, you can prove it. But how did you prove it?
I mean, for example, so at UCSD they have what's called a paramagnetic resonance machine, and it's basically able to look at the very subtle different magnetic qualities of a substance, or in this case, water. So we imprinted I think it was with 10 different infoceuticals, and all of them had different paramagnetic spectra that came up. So that was, a nice piece of evidence. But I say the more compelling side is actually the work that they did on tissue cultures. And I mentioned the COVID one, but they're also looking at mitochondria. So we have one set of information called cell driver, and it's basically designed to increase the energy output of the cell. And this was incredible, but they actually counted on average a 50% increase in the density of mitochondria in the cell. Even more fascinating, they also measured, so they then wanted to damage the mitochondria with hydrogen peroxide, and they found that the ones that we'd imprinted had a 67% protection rate. It also actually increased the cell membrane resilience, so basically less environmental toxins come into the cell. And so, and actually the other thing, it also increased the efficiency of glycosis by 24%. So there was a 24% increase in the energy output as well.
So you basically made mitochondria into super mitochondria using structured water.
Basically, yeah.
I did have dinner with Hamel from UCSD, And he's a very knowledgeable mitochondrial expert, one of the top in the world, I would say.
He has a mitochondrial testing company as well. Yeah.
It's remarkable when you get a hardcore professor who's doing serious, I've been to his lab, so have you. And you realize he studied this stuff and says, I didn't think it would work. It absolutely works. It's reliable. I can see the effect. That's a pretty strong endorsement when you take a scientist who's a no BS guy and he says, well, I saw this. And Joe Dispenza, the same thing. Who would ever think that stuff works, except when you do thousands of studies of gene expression, EEG, and saliva changes and gut biome changes, and you just prove beyond a tiny difference, but massive differences in medical outcomes. Like, oh, wow. It turns out meditation works, and so does structured water, which is really, really cool. How do you get the signal into the water?
Basically use light. I mean, you can do it in different ways, but in our case, we use light with a 10,000 volt electrostatic field, and then with light, it's red and green light we found works the best.
How did you figure this out?
Well, I might backtrack to our origination story because that will probably help people. So, very, very short version. When I was 21, I had these 3 accidents. One, I was ice climbing. I fell off, fractured my spine. 2, I climbed actually another mountain, got a fever, got down. And the 3rd, honestly, it was a whole gay coming out story, but basically I was outed by my so-called boyfriend at my 21st party, whole load of stuff of parents and family rejecting me at the time. And, those were the 3 triggers that led me to end up basically bedridden with chronic fatigue syndrome. I'll skip out the years of staring at a ceiling and trying all the different things and every single therapy under the sun. But about basically 6 years into that journey, I was just thinking like, okay, looking at trying to work out chronic fatigue, how to get over, reading all these boring books that honestly say like 80% of people never recover.
It's nonsense. You can recover.
It's nonsense. I'm not going to get anywhere like this. But this is 30 odd years ago, and I was stuck in England with the NHS. And I just thought to myself, well, why don't I study where energy comes from instead and look at things from a positive frame of mind. Like if I study where healthy people have energy, and going towards that would be a better idea. So I was like looking around. This is pre-Google, actually. I was looking around on Yahoo,
Alta Vista, all the good ones.
Yeah, all of that. And actually, I started writing an energy medicine website of all things. And I met. I was under a different doctor, and I asked him who the most prominent energy medicine researchers around the world. I didn't even know that he knew any. I mean, it's a complete fluke that he did. And he gave me a fax number of this professor in Australia called Professor Peter Fraser.
He's a famous guy, yeah.
And he, I wrote to him. He sent me this fax back. He said, I don't know why I'm sending you this. And it was a paper on quantum biology. I understood, 5-10% of it at the time, but I could tell that he was a genius. And so a few months went past because I was sick, no confidence. But I rang him up and I said, Peter, I've got this idea to make a home wellness system because I thought if people could work out what was wrong with them from the comfort of their home, they wouldn't have to go and visit doctors. But basically, because my parents were driving me 2 hours up to London and back, and they would only do it once every 3 months. So I was like, this isn't a route. So I had this crazy idea that I could make a system at home from home, get myself better, get other people better, and get an income and escape this frigging prison that I was in at home. And of course, that actually worked out, which is pretty unbelievable. But Peter, anyway, spoke to Peter again. He agreed to meet. He flew from Los Angeles. I flew from England, and we hanged out for 10 days. He was explaining all these, his body field theories and what he was doing. But in his head, he was like, this kid is super sick. Nothing's going to go anywhere unless I can get him better. So he started giving me the original nutraceuticals, which had a different name at that point. And I just got these amazing, I basically got these very strong healing responses. Like, for example, like he gave me an antidote to to flaviviruses. I got a fever for a couple of days and it went away. Or he made me another one called emotional stress release that took me from a very wired and tired state to just a tired state. The wired part went away. So at that point, I was like, okay, I know there's something what he was saying. So at that point, we basically both formed a company. He emigrated from Australia, moved to the UK. We actually did 10 years of R&D then. Wow. in the UK, and sort of he'd already been working on this 30 odd years, but not in a computerized way or anything. And he actually just made this singular remedy, and I sort of like, that won't work. We need to separate it. We also had this concept that we basically only wanted to present information to the body that was positive, that was basically based on something working. It's not a short process, but basically we have sets of information that will help the immune system tackle different viruses and bacteria and fungi. How we did that, we actually took analogs of divergent meridians, stack them all up till we got a match, or you could use the word resonance to those viruses, and that will basically help correct any cellular damage done from the virus, or if you like, it's retuning the cell to as though the virus isn't there, and that's why you get this great immune response that I had. So that's one example. I could take the heart. So we've got another one called Heart Imprinter. That we're actually looking at the shape and the structure of all four chambers of the heart. So that's more of a mathematical sort of set. So we basically recorded the information of the sort of optimal shape of the heart. They're all pretty different. Or when we were looking at the nervous system, we're generating perfect alpha and delta, alpha, beta, and delta waves. So we would record those sets of information. So every single one is different. That's why it took 10 years. And then I was the original lab rat, seeing what happened on me. And obviously we were seeing it on other patients in Europe. And, some of these particular sets of information, might have had like 20 different iterations till we got it right. Some of the early ones were quite, how would I put it? Well, some of them we got wrong. Some of them we got wrong, and I got some weird reactions.
Yeah, it happens.
It happens. Yeah, but we're still alive, so it's okay.
Do you ever wish that you had a remote control that could just change how you feel at any time? I do. And there is such a thing. It's called the Apollo wearable by Apollo Neuro. It doesn't just track your biometrics like most wearables. It allows you to control your biometrics. How? You just wear it around your ankle, your wrist, or as a clip attached to your clothes, and it helps to rebalance your autonomic nervous system using vibration. The more you wear it, the more it improves your HRV and trains your body to relax, sleep better, and find deeper focus. Neuroscientists and physicians developed the Apollo wearable, and it's got research to back it up. Users experience up to 40% less stress, 30 minutes more sleep at night, and up to 25% more focus. I've been wearing it whenever I feel like I want help shifting my state, and it makes a big difference in stress levels. Try it out and see how it works for you. Head to apolloneuro.com/Dave Asprey to save 15% on your Apollo wearable. That's apolloneuro.com/Dave Asprey, save 15%.
It's interesting. Back in the 90s, and when I was in Silicon Valley and I was dealing with chronic fatigue, I was pretty desperate. So you try all this stuff that's supposed to work. And then I did try homeopathy. And by the way, I didn't get strong results from it. I have a few times for various things. But what you're doing is...
I got sicker, actually, from it.
Did you? And what you're doing is different than that. It's the same domain, but you're not shaking stuff up in water.
The big difference... so in homeopathy, it's basically a negative message, and it's a very indirect message. I mean, it's based on hoping that a dilute herb, or nux vomica, that's a herb that should help you not throw up. That's such an indirect set of information. What we're actually doing is actually saying, no, this is how this is how the nervous system is when it's functioning properly, and we're putting that information. So it's a very different principle, and it's much more direct.
It's much more direct, and it's more precise. Well, one of the things I did aside from trying homeopathy was I bought a Rife machine. And some listeners might have heard me talk about this years ago, but this is one of the bioenergetic treatments that goes back almost 100 years to when a guy named Royal Rife, who was worked, say Tesla and he were working on the same stuff, and some of Tesla's inventions kind of looked a lot like Royal Rife's. And he had created a device using a radio transmitter running through a neon bulb or some other kind of charged gas, and was watching on a microscope he invented viruses or bacteria or fungus or parasites just blow up. And he spent thousands of hours making tables of what frequencies would cause what organism to become dysfunctional. But all right, this is cool. I'm a little bit skeptical, so I bought this thing, and it was like a CB radio with an amplifier and a frequency generator and a tube, and it looked like something out of like a comic book bad superhero kind of thing. I thought, all right, well, I'm going to try this because I'm desperate, and I think I've got Lyme disease, even though I've got toxic mold. And my partner at the time, who'd also been exposed to toxic mold, had a herpes virus lesions inside her sinuses. It's one of the more painful things you can have. This is a side effect of your immune system being turned off by mold. And I didn't tell her what I was doing. She was reading a newspaper, and the machine's 20 feet away from her. And I typed in the frequency specific for the herpes virus, and I hit play. Within 2 seconds, she screams, throws the newspaper down, grabs her nose, and is like, turn it off, turn it off, turn it off. Because I was directly resonating the herpes virus that was in her sinuses, and it was too strong for what she was doing. But she felt it, and it hurt. And you can't make this stuff up. There was no placebo there. She thought I was working on my own stuff. And I just thought, wow, this is really powerful technology. There's one problem. There's more than 10,000 frequencies. I have no idea which one's going to work for me. Right. And I ended up selling that machine. Today I have the biocharger, which is a unique kind of thing that's based on those principles. I've done a couple of really good interviews about that. But how do you solve the problem not knowing what frequency to put in the water? It's like I had 10,000 frequencies. It's a huge stack. So what is NES doing that's different?
Firstly, we don't use frequencies.
Okay. Well, there you go.
So it's information. Frequency is something that happened, the multiple times a second, like 10 hertz means 10 times a second, 1 hertz means 1 times a second.
Right.
Just like whether it's your cell phone or your radio, your radio could be at 98.2 hertz, but the music is basically done in binary, and it's carried in on that signal. So really the key is the information, or we actually carry information in on binary, and the body does accept a binary signal. I shouldn't say we don't use any frequency in our My Health device that helps regenerate tissue and get rid of injuries. We do use some frequency, but the core bit of intellectual property, it's actually that map of the information of the body, i.e. there's basically a healthy blueprint of all these different functions of the body and all these different organs. So it's that's the key part. But to answer your question, that's why it took 10 years. And in binary, well, we actually converted binary out of it was actually a 12-digit system. But it literally is I say trial and error. So we basically like dial a 0, dial a 1, dial a 2. And if we got a match to a different part of the body, we got a match. And if we didn't, we crossed it off and had to start again. So it is, that's why it took so long. I mean, it is trial and error.
Okay. That's why it took 10 years to do it?
Yeah.
Okay. I think some listeners by now are saying, this is not believable. What do you say to people who say this can't be real?
Well, I'd say two things. One, there's a direct experience, so try it out for yourself, and then you can actually see. And the second is go and have a look at the research. So, there's all our original research that you can read in our book called Decoding the Human Body Field. And secondly, you can also see on our website, there's papers that have been written by UCSD on all of those experiments. And not that anyone can go and meet Professor Hemmel, but he's a university professor. His reputation is on the line by looking at all this. And he's just reporting what he finds. I mean, we have no influence on that whatsoever. And there's another. We have Nottingham University, actually Bournemouth University in England, are just about to do a study on our wearable as well. So that's what I would say to people. And also, I would actually say a third thing: why on earth, when you're looking at science, physics governs chemistry, chemistry governs biology, biology governs health. Why wouldn't you put physics first? And we've had 100 plus years dominated on this chemistry layer, yet physics governs chemistry. And we've had, I don't know, trillions and trillions of dollars looking at the chemistry layer.
Yeah.
There's us, a few $1 million over X years. I mean, there's a few other parties as well, but it's probably under 50 million for this whole field. If $1 trillion had gone, and it will go into this field over the next decade, just imagine where the science will be then. And that's really why, because it's been suppressed because of wanting a chemical-based system that's been wonderful for big pharma, not wonderful for all of our health. So I would add that too.
Well, a lot of people make a lot of money selling chemicals and telling you that's the only way to heal. Yet, just like there's many signaling networks in the body, there are many different ways to heal. My experience has been that the lower down in the stack you go, the more broad effects you have, which is why I focus on increasing mitochondrial function, which means you change the environment around you, which is what they're responding to. And what you're doing is you're changing the information environment around them. Is that a good way to put it? Like, what are you changing around the mitochondria to make them work better?
We're basically delivering information to the cell, to the mitochondria, that they then respond to. And it's a little bit different, but in a way it's no different to if a chemical was presented to it. In the end, even a chemical, when you take away the molecule, it's information. Let's go really deep down a rabbit hole. So, ultimately, from a physics point of view, everything is really only information and energy. And you could say, like, all of reality, all molecules, all substances is information, structured energy. So even chemistry is basically information combined with energy. And all we're doing really is you're just getting more direct, just delivering the pure information.
Okay. That makes sense. I still think a lot of people listening are going to say, like, this can't be real because it flies in the face of most of the way we envision the world. Going back to all the chemistry classes, all the chemistry stuff is real. And there's other layers in reality, including the quantum layer, where a lot of this stuff ultimately ends up. And the biggest study that I've found that just validates the things that you and I both believe and have been working on for years, even stuff like heart rate variability training. It's that when your heart beats instantaneously with no lag time at all, the proton spin of all the protons in your brain changes in conjunction with your heart. Even a magnetic field takes time to propagate. This is a quantum communication happening from your heart to your brain. And it's been shown with physics detectors. You can't make it up. What it means is that your body is chemical, it's vibrational, it's light, it's magnetic, and it's quantum. Is what you're doing quantum, or is it something different?
It's definitely quantum, yeah. I mean, I always get a little... I don't generally use the word because I think when people say you have a quantum system or device, people get a bit skeptical. I mean, that's why
I have quantum Twinkies. They're amazing.
That's why I name this space bioenergetics, not quantum biology or whatever, because the word gets overused. I mean, in the end, what does the word quantum even mean? I mean, it just means something very small, but it's generally referring to the fact that you can get action at a distance, or that different parts of the body and reality are entangled, which is absolutely true. Which is why again, you can have distance healers, like someone can be distance praying for someone in another continent, and at work you can have different devices. We don't make these claims again because we haven't gone down the quantum angle at all. But ultimately, you can broadcast from a device and treat someone remotely. And that's because of the fact that quantum entanglement, it is a true physics property.
That also just pissed off a lot of people, Harry. What are you trying to do here?
Well, we might as well be bold.
Are you saying that distance healing is a real thing?
It's definitely a real thing, and I can give some concrete examples. In fact, that's from Edgar Mitchell, who was the second astronaut to land on the moon. So I met him and filmed him in our first film called the Living Matrix. So he actually had kidney cancer, and he went. Well, he didn't go. It was done remotely. So there was a famous remote healer in Canada who did a session, and he got rid of Edgar Mitchell's kidney cancer. You can see that story in the Living Matrix. This one's really far out, and I didn't believe it, but I went and filmed it, so I know it's true. But I interviewed Eric Pearl, and he told me of a kid with cerebral palsy whose hands were all bound and he couldn't walk, and he told me how he did a healing session and he was able to walk. It's like, oh, this story sounds really far out. But we flew out to Greece. We met the doctor in the hospital. We met the family. We met the kid. It all checked out. And again, you can see that in that film and judge. Well, you can judge for yourself. And I've seen countless things like this at this point.
You and I both have. I've done some shamanic training, and I know several dozen people who can reliably do this. I've tested some of the techniques on people who are like, what are you doing? That if you're doing something to someone they don't know you're doing and they text you to ask what you're doing, you kind of have to ask yourself, God, I think that might be working, right? And I think this is an ability that most, if not all people have. It's just one that's hard to access unless you do a lot of meditation or a lot of work.
And believe it in the end.
What'd you say in the end?
Well, believe it. That's the most hard part is, you hear these things and you think you don't have the ability, but as soon as you know that you have the ability, you can do it. I noticed that when I think I was 26, 27, I didn't understand or know anything about law of attraction, resonance, any of these things. And then the moment I think I read the field and then I read the holographic universe, literally while I was reading it, then I suddenly noticed the magic of reality and that all my thoughts were interconnected and how everything just started happening around me that I was thinking.
The Field is a book by Lynn McTaggart, who's been on the show. And it goes through tons of evidence for this. The holographic universe, similar thing, where there's actually way more validated scientific evidence than most of us would ever believe about that kind of stuff. But in order to read it, you have to be able to, well, at least have curiosity about it.
We should go down that rabbit hole. So, because part of what I read in the field applies to how our system works, actually.
Okay, let's talk about that.
And I've never said this on a podcast. So in the field, I believe it's chapter 3 or 4. There's a chapter that describes Princeton University anomalies research studies, and they were basically looking at how consciousness could interact with random events.
Oh, yeah.
And they studied it for 25 years. And in short, what they were able to find is that people, through their consciousness, they could alter. Actually, they had people in a locked room, and a TV screen would only be black or would only be white. And then they had the person in the other room, and then they would say, project black or project white. Well, they were able to predict and influence the random event generator 56% of the time. They did it through radioactive decay, marbles, coin tossing, but also pseudo-random numbers in a computer. And I read that. I was like, oh, God, that's fascinating. So I wrote some code and basically drew out a chessboard in computer code, and basically had 100,000 coin flips for each chessboard. And then on a piece of paper, I colored out my chessboard, in this random way. And the computer program, and there's no webcam, there's no funny business, it's just using randomness, was able to fill out that chessboard completely accurately. And I did the stats on it, and it was 1 in 68 million chances it could have done that. And so, I did that. I was like, holy shit. I was like, okay, let's see if it can predict my age. So I put in my different ages, and it could predict my age. I think at the time I was 26. And then I was like, oh my goodness, like you could do remote viewing like this. You could unencrypt bank accounts, or you could make a health analysis device.
You could unencrypt bank accounts? How would that work?
Should I really tell everyone on the podcast? I don't know.
I think so.
You think so?
I mean, I'm a computer security guy. I want to know. Everyone wants to know.
Everyone wants to know. Basically, because there is an influence between consciousness and random events. Basically, you're able to get information transfer at a distance without the encryption part of it. I don't think I should go too far into saying that.
So you're talking about remote viewing?
Partly remote viewing. I mean, I've worked out how to do it, but I don't think I'm going to broadcast it on a podcast.
Is that when my accounts are all low every time I hang out with you? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. People may not, like, I haven't seen you do that.
I haven't done that. And our thinking at the time, and it's still valid today, was to apply techniques like that for good. And so we basically applied that for basically doing health analysis. That was more where we wanted to go with it.
Okay. I believe you more than you might think. And I think a lot of people here are maybe a little bit more skeptical than that. And that's okay. I do know a friend who may do a podcast about it. We'll see. She's someone I've known very well, was written about in the textbook on remote viewing stuff, because she had the most accurate ability to view things that she just shouldn't be able to know, but somehow she could. And she doesn't do that in her daily life. She tried to get a 3-letter agency, tried to recruit her, and she said, no, I don't want to work for you. But that stuff is real. Just not everyone knows how to do it. And there are classes on how to do it. And some people are better at it than others. And I've really turned around on this. I would not have believed any of this. Years ago, I had a guy who worked for me, and he had played probably 10,000 hours of poker. He paid for his schooling with poker and all. And he said, Dave, if you give me a deck of cards that's well played and you deal 2 cards, I can always tell you which card is higher. Just have to hold my hand over it. I just know. I'm like, yeah, right. That sounds like BS. So I shuffled the cards myself. I did it over and over, and I'd deal them. I said, 2 cards, that one, that one, that one. And I wrote it down. 9 out of 10 times he called it. There's no way he was faking it. I was right there, and we swapped another deck of cards that had been used for a while. Same thing. They're not marked cards. It's just some kind of thing. And when you read some of the books about the scientific studies of this, or listen to the interview with Roland McCready from the Global Consciousness Initiative, which is part of the HeartMath Institute. They've been studying our ability for consciousness to change random numbers. There are effects that, if you know about them, they kind of piss you off, because it means that a lot of what you believe about the world is a functional story, but it's not a fully accurate story. And in this case, what's even creepier is this guy's doing his card trick thing. And I had just learned an ancient Chinese energy medicine manipulation technique at a 3-day course in Palo Alto. Guy flew in from China to teach it. And this was the beginnings of my training. So let me see what I can do. So I applied that technique in a way that blocks energy. And he went to do it. I didn't tell him I was doing this. So I said, hey, let's do another deck of cards. So I deal the first 2 and I do the thing. And he stops and he looks at me and he goes, what did you just do? I can't do it right now. And I was like, oh my God. And that was actually at the beginning of just my belief that there's probably more consequences to hating someone than you might think. Like your thoughts, your heart, especially your emotions, I think they affect reality way more than we're aware of.
They do. Like, gratitude, appreciation, abundance, joy, a love. The more you can cultivate those states, the more, your intentions will come to reality for sure.
It sounds super hippie. Then again, we're talking about, lights with encoded frequencies at a binary level affecting water. But when you drink it, universities can detect a difference in it. So we've just crossed into the land of like superhero science fiction kind of stuff. It seems like that stuff has an effect, but it's not a strong effect. And if it was that obvious, you'd make a glass of, super powered NES water and everyone would drink it and we'd all become enlightened or something. Why aren't people more aware of these things? Like, how subtle are they?
I would actually say it's stronger than probably relaying, actually. However, why aren't people aware of it? Because, it's literally to what we were saying earlier. You've had 100. Well, actually, if I go back to the beginning, you basically have Rockefeller. Rockefeller was obviously behind the oil industry. He was looking for another profit center for chemicals. So he was really behind the pharmaceutical industry, and he obviously set up the AMA and all of the medical infrastructure. And he shut down everything and anything that would compete with that pharmaceutical profit center for his chemical industry. So that's the start of it. And then by the time you go forward, 50, 60 years, everyone is, and I don't think who knows what his motives were. I think he was into profit. But if you go forward 50, 60 years, ignorance is so entrenched and people just defend their positions. And, unfortunately, ignorance is always the enemy of truth. But over time, truth does always prevail. And when we're looking at, if we project forward over the next 50 years, 100% physics is going to get recognized as being as important. I would say more important, but I'll accept as important as chemistry, and it being really the fundamental driver of really the rules of chemistry and biology. And this era will change, but it's literally just from ignorance. But as truth gets out, all of this changes.
Just, I think you're right, and the more awareness people have this as possible, the easier it is. Let me ask you some stuff that I've never asked you about, and then I want to get into your voice scan technology in NES because it's a really interesting idea, and other guests, including some very, very well-respected scientists, have talked about how your voice reveals things about you, including Dr. Stephen Porges, who's the father of polyvagal theory, very, very well-respected, has been on the show twice, actually, who looks at voice and all the different things that are included in it that you might not know. How does one defend against this? If you're saying technology can manipulate this stuff, and you've got technology that can manipulate it, we both said that humans can manipulate these bioenergetic fields. Where's your bioenergetic firewall?
The fortunate thing, the more you present the body with positive information, that really is the defense. Because when you're looking at the body's, what we call the overall body field, the stronger that is, and you can get it stronger just by presenting it with more positive information. The stronger that is, the more easy it's able to defend against things.
So when your mitochondria work well, they're harder to influence with external fields.
Absolutely. And it pairs in with the two things right at the beginning. The more energy you have and the more efficient your body is, and it becomes more efficient by presenting more positive information to the basically more resilient your overall body is.
That's so weird. The whole biohacking idea of creating highly resilient humans who can handle anything life brings their way would make you less susceptible to external manipulations of your fields because your field was stronger. Like, who would have thought, right?
Well, it's like the hormesis argument. Like when we were both really sick, neither of us would have been able to handle. In fact, actually, one of the first times I met you was in Vancouver Island 6-7 years ago.
Yeah.
And I went cold swimming before I met you, and I was just absolutely exhausted. That's because my body was not very resilient. It didn't have enough energy to do it. Yet these days, I have a cold bath every morning, no issue. But the more energy you have, the more resilient you are.
It seems to be that's how it works. And the resilience comes from, I can handle heat or cold or exercise, or concentration for a long period of time.
Even radioactivity, even nasty EMS. I mean, I think this is fascinating, but I was traveling with my RV and I went past the Mary Widow radon mines. And I was like, what is this place about? So I stopped the RV, went in, and then people with leukemia and all these things were going into these radioactive mines in Montana, and they're all basically, they're getting healed, and they would come in for 10 days a year to keep their illnesses at bay. So then I looked into it and I found all these papers on radioactive hormesis, and it's a real thing. So if people living near a nuclear power station are healthier. If you've got a lot of radon in your building, you're healthier. And that's it's basically from the hormesis effect. But I mean, it has to be low dose radiation. Obviously, super high dose is not good for you. But yeah.
Well, it's kind of like sunshine. I mean, sunshine is provably bad for you. Just lay out in it for 2 or 3 days with no protection, and you'll see how bad it is for you. But a lower dose is really beneficial for you, and no sunshine is bad for you. So I've often wondered, if you look back in history, even at radium, they used to sell radium water for healing, and it probably worked. I'm not saying it's good for you, bad for you. Never tried it. But there was evidence that it worked.
I bought some radioactive stones, and actually I filled up my RV with radioactive water and drank it for the next week.
Did you really?
I did. My partner couldn't. He really didn't like that.
So did you glow in the dark? Did you have any effects? Did you test it?
Well, so I went in the mine. I did my hour or two in the mine, and I drank all the water. And what I remember is you feel slightly sick when you're in the mine. And then the next day, I just felt great. So, yeah.
I can tell you that my grandparents would probably be pissed off hearing this. They both worked at Los Alamos National Laboratories for their entire careers. And actually, my grandmother just passed at 102 a couple of days ago, and it had a very full and good life. And she says that she, and particularly my grandfather, were exposed to every element on the periodic table, including things like plutonium and uranium and americium and all that kind of stuff, right? And so they had these incredible lives. And she lived 102, even though she was catching, I guess that she was using paraffin under bleachers in Chicago to catch neutrinos and count them when there was no vent hoods. And somehow she had 7 kids with this radioactive exposure. So guys, I'm not saying you should go snort uranium. It's provably bad for you. But are some forms of radiation hormetic? Probably. But I'm not sure I would go hang out in the mine.
Well, again, it's low dose. I mean, there is, I think it's called hormesis. It is. It's called hormesis, a scientific basis. And there's a collection of papers, and it has all the protocols. It has all of the evidence for both radiation, heavy metals, EMF, various other, and anyway, it's a whole clip, and that's on Amazon. So if people want to know,
Hormesis, a what?
I think it's hormesis scientific basis. I'll say I can Google it later to make sure it's accurate, but I'm pretty sure that's what it's called.
I might have that on my shelf even. I'm going to have to check this out. Path and progression to significance. That doesn't sound right. Here it is, a revolution. I don't know, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I can send it later.
It's interesting though. There's all this stuff that really most of us haven't heard about. I haven't played with the radioactive stuff, mostly, I guess, because I always look at risk return. And it seems like some of the damage you could do could be hard to do. But I appreciate they're willing to talk about it. In the biohacking land, we have the right to do anything we want to our own biology to see if it's going to make the kind of difference we want in our life. And we can choose risks and choose rewards. And sometimes there's various power-hungry companies or others who try to say you can't do that. But you can, right? And I don't know, maybe if I had the right location and the right reason, would I consider it? maybe, right? So that one's on my, risk reward. Got to get more data. I'm not saying the data isn't there. I'm just saying I haven't seen it. So for people who think that that's just out of control, maybe not. I want to just give a shout out for your company name too, as we're talking about this stuff. It's neshealth.com/Dave. If you guys go to the /Dave part, he's going to give you something free. And it's the voice scan. And of course, on being a coach. So tell me about the voice scan you're doing, because vibration from our voice also carries other things in it. And I've had a couple episodes on voice coaching, stuff with Stephen Porges. And so there's something that comes through that's beyond just the words. And what are you doing with your voice scanning technology from NES?
It's that goes back to what we were talking about earlier about the pair studies. So what we're actually doing is we're looking at noise within the voice, and then I'm basically comparing sections of that noise to parts of our map of the body field. That might sound a bit confusing, but you know how we were describing earlier that we could basically predict which squares were black or white in the chessboard. Imagine if instead those are black and white squares, that they're actually different aspects of the body. So one would represent the heart, one would represent the liver, one would represent the kidney. And then basically we're looking at the patterns. And when you get a very statistically significant resonance or match to those different organ systems, then that basically has relevant data for you. Meaning it's not based on frequency. And I've done a very deep dive into voice. I've spoken to, though Red Bull put $6 million into it because they thought they could, get stuff out of the frequency of the voice of the drivers. They couldn't. I don't want to mention her name. There's a famous, not that famous, but in the voice world, who makes some other voice technology in the States. I got access to that database with all the frequencies in it. I hired a data scientist, basically looked through it all. And the only effect was out of the randomness side. It wasn't in the frequency side, believe it or not. So yeah, the idea that a single frequency has a thing in voice, I've debunked. However, you can use voice. You can use voice in a resonance technique where you're actually looking at patterns of randomness, and that does work. So it's a bit of a specialist technique.
Okay, so you've got an unusual way of doing it. So when people come in and they want to do the voice analysis, and I know it's a gift for people, I have not had a chance to do this. I mean, I have 2 NES devices, and I've had one of them for I think about 8 years, and I appreciate them. But I don't think the NES device does the voice scan, does it?
No, I mean, but you can just do it through the web. But yeah, basically, if you go to neshealth.com/Dave, you can record your voice, and you'll get a whole bunch of health insights immediately.
I've also seen systems that will look at your eyes and do the same thing, not iridiology, but actually the way your eyes move. There's other systems that work on analyzing subtle fluctuations in your breath. So there's all kinds of data coming off your body, and I don't have any difficulty believing that a voice analysis like this can have very rich data in it. In part, just because I know it does, but in part too, I trust you because you've spent so much time in the field, and you're a leader in the field of bioenergetics. So I think you've done your homework on that one. So when you log in, what happens? You just say some words, or how does it work?
So yeah, you basically just count to 10. And then during that time, that's enough to get the overall resonance of your voice. Then after that, you receive a report on like 200 odd different parts of your body, including your organs, your meridians, different mind-body correlations. And yeah, from that, you have some choices. Like you could either go and see one of our practitioners for a consultation, or if you want to become a health coach, there's basically a free course on becoming a bioenergetic health coach.
I think this is going to be a rapidly growing part of the coaching industry, and something that might be hard to do with AI. Do you think an AI system could do what you're doing?
Not really. It's a little bit different. I mean, we have some elements of AI, but more actually, because we have a wearable that's coming out as well. And I don't know what date this comes out, but in September we have a wearable coming out. So we're combining our wearable data with the voice data, and then within an app on your phone that does generate auto coaching habits for people. So that's sort of AI based. But the actual fundamental research and technique we used originally wasn't AI.
Okay. All right, Harry. I'm going to do my voice scan here on the podcast, and let's see what it says about me. Start my free scan. This is N as in Nancy, ES as in Sam, health.com/Dave. Start your free scan, bioenergetic voice scan. Make sure you're in a location your voice will be the primary sound you record. Click the button below and count from 1 until the recording process is complete. All right. I'm going to center myself. Going to breathe through my stomach. Going to send power. Okay, just kidding. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, enter my name here. Benjamin Dover. That's my 7th grade sense of humor. Someone laughed. Part of my longevity strategy is to always have a 7th grade sense of humor because it keeps me younger. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. Says gender male. And can check, I want to be a health coach. No. It says, what's ED? That's a bad acronym.
That just stands for energetic driver. So the
energetic driver. Thank you, because it says I have high ED, and that can't be right.
Yeah. So the first screen you're looking at is the strength of the energy being from all of your different organ systems.
Is red good or bad?
So basically, it's a relative system. I can't see your results, but tell me the most significant ones that are showing for you.
My ED9 muscle is maxed out, and it's red. What does that mean? Does that mean I have weak muscles?
So you could have exercised super hard, but basically, yeah. So your muscles are a bit overstressed right now. And if we presented your body with the information for muscles, it would help.
Interesting. Let's see. And then it also says bone and nerve are high like that.
So similar. We would want to basically present information to help your nervous system and your bones.
It's strange because I have exceptionally strong bones. Like they have a hard time cutting them during surgery.
With bones, it's basically made of, from Chinese medicine perspective, it's made with liver, pancreas, and kidney. So it could actually mean liver, pancreas, kidney are a bit taxed as well.
And I only have one kidney, so that could probably throw off some results here. Maybe.
Do you only have one kidney?
Yep. Sold the other one on eBay. Pay for college. I was just born that way.
Yeah.
But my one kidney is like a super mega kidney, and it has as much function as 2, which means I'm more evolved than a lot of people because I have less risk of being shanked in the kidney. That's what I like to tell myself. But it's apparently congenital and maybe related to folic acid intake in mom. It also says, so what are the differences between green and yellow on here?
So basically a blank one means that there isn't a strong resonance and it doesn't need attention. A green is just a little bit. A yellow is about medium, and a red is basically the full thing of where we would want to present either an infoceutical or the right information in a light bed, etc.
Got it. And then what's ES11 male? What does that mean?
ES11 male. Oh, yeah, it's down there. So that is basically to do with overall male energy. So libido, charisma. It's also related to muscle. It's basically muscle and your genitals, in short, and a bit your heart as well, actually. Got it.
So that one was like a halfway yellow bar, But I think I have an excuse for that. It has to do with my morning activities this morning, which shall not be on the podcast. So that could be that.
Yeah.
But interesting. My feedback on the system would be when I click on each of those things, or if it had a pop-up that told me how to interpret the results, it would be helpful. So that was like my energy strength, and there's one on energy flow. There's one on emotions.
Yeah. So if you look, if you look at emotions, for instance, so you've got like positive emotions that are displayed on the left and then negative ones on the right.
Like love and compassion and joy and things like that. Okay. Got it. And so the way you would use this is how? So I've got, some of these could use some of these don't need anything. Very few reds on here. So what would I do as a result of this voice analysis?
So a couple of things. So either if you want a full interpretation with a proper bioenergetic health coach that's been trained to interpret it, then you can speak to them and you can basically see your full body field. And there's 400 different items and tests within that. Secondly, if you just want to try the right infoceutical that comes up, you can just order the infoceutical that come up. Or third, you might want to become a bioenergetic health coach, and we have a free training program to give people a sample of what being a bioenergetic health coach is like.
Okay, a lot of people listen to the show probably will just take the free training and get the knowledge. You can use it on yourself, or maybe you say, hey, I want to be a health coach. Either one's cool. It's interesting, though, that you could use a voice to get what looks like kind of Chinese medicine or meridian analysis of a person. If I was to interpret what a triple burner is, that's an acupuncture point, and that's on here. So really cool idea, Harry, and I'm interested to learn more about this. And I'm sure that I can get you to send me a whole big box of infoceuticals if I ask nicely, right?
I probably will, yeah. No, of course.
If not, I can just order them. All right, that's cool. And one thing that's changed with you over the years, and one of the reasons I know you're working for the good guys, I would say, is that when we first met, you used the NES device, which is a few $1,000s, and you gave me a free scan, and you use that for scanning. And what you and I are both working to do is to take all this knowledge and make it accessible to everyone. So you're saying, look, here's a free analysis that's going to give you data points on where to focus. And I'm doing the same with all the advice I have. I give it all away for free, right? And then I do the big conference. And now I'm about to launch an AI tool that makes recommendations. Well, if you want this goal, here's what parameters to track. Here's what biohacks to do. And here's the supplements to take. Even here's the pharmaceuticals you might want to consider. Talk to your doctor, or just, find a way to order them online. But the idea here is, how do we make it so you don't have to be wealthy, and you don't have to spend a huge amount of your life becoming an expert in biohacking or in bioenergetic medicine? So I love it that you just have a free voice thing. How accurate is the voice analysis compared to working with a practitioner who has an NES device where it's an electrodermal screening?
It's actually the same.
Oh, no kidding. Wow. So you're replacing your multi-$1,000 device with a free voice test. Great business model.
Well, as a practice.
Just teasing you. This is only for analysis. The device treats.
This is a sample of it. This is a sample of it.
Yeah. The NES device also will treat you for these things, which is a different animal. So I'm mostly just teasing. But this is the future of where we're going with bioenergetics, from what I've seen, is we have an ability to diagnose with a whole bunch of different devices that are non-medical, or maybe some of them are medical. And to be able to look at a photo, especially a high-resolution photo with accurate colors, or to look at your eyes, or look at your breath, or look at the strength of your pulse. I know you've done a lot of cool work around pulse with your wearable. All of these are amazing data points just coming off the body for free. And we just haven't looked at how to interpret them because there was a belief that they almost didn't matter that much. Or in medicine, they just meant you had a chemical imbalance, but that's not what they mean. It's a system imbalance, and it's something that you can work on. So I'm grateful that you're doing this kind of work. Most people until now probably haven't heard of maybe this branch of biohacking, or just this branch of, I'm not going to call it medicine because then they'll want to regulate it, but this branch of healing, which is what it really is. thanks, Harry, for being on the show and for making NES and just for all your leadership in this field of biohacking.
No, thank you. It's a pleasure.
neshealth.com/Dave to get the free scan, the one I just took. And it's pretty cool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it again and see if it's the same. Will it be the same?
It will be the same. Yep.
All right. I'm not going to take up the episode doing that. But there you have it. Bioenergetics in a nutshell. And thanks, Harry.
Thank you. Perfect.
You're listening to The Human Upgrade with Dave Asprey.